Oh, let's just take a deep breath into this moment. With all this joy and wonder and celebration, we come together now in this sacred time. With hearts of gratitude, we open wide to the movement of spirit and know that as we journey through this day, we are so grateful for all the moms and moms of our hearts who have blessed us along life's way. And so with those hearts of gratitude, we now move on into our service. Say, thank you, God. And so it is. Amen.
I'm going to go put this down. I'll be right back. Well, happy Mother's Day. You're welcome. Welcome. And I also want to say just a special happy Mother's Day to my wife, Sarah, and also to my mom. So a very happy Mother's Day to both of you. And really to all of us that are here today, because Mother's Day, it's the day where we're going to be honoring unconditional love. Reverend Jan and I are going to be speaking about unconditional love. And so before all of the men out there tune me out and start running through their schedule for the rest of today and thinking, oh, it's talking about mothers and unconditional love, I don't have to pay attention to this. Just know that all of us are called to shine that light of unconditional love, that divine quality of unconditional love in our world. So sorry, there's no free pass today, guys. You're gonna get to learn how to be unconditional love just as all of us are. You see, it's through that presence of unconditional love that we're able to most effectively make a difference in our world. It's through that presence of unconditional love that we're able to stand up for one another, to care for one another, to guide and support one another on our life's journeys. And so today on Mother's Day, Reverend Jan and I are going to do something a little different than we've done the past few years. The past few years, we've been very blessed to have Reverend Jan share the message with us on Mother's Day. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to share that message. Because what I've come to learn, and I saw this all the time in school, is that you could take a topic like unconditional love, and you give it to two ministers, and they take it in wildly different ways. And so what Reverend Jan and I are going to do today is we're going to use as our examples for unconditional love the books of Esther and the book of Ruth from the Hebrew Scriptures. We're going to take a look at the characters of Esther and the characters of Ruth, and we're going to see how they represented unconditional love in their lives. Now, these are two very, very different books in the Bible. They were written to convey different messages to different people and written at different times. But if you take a look at what it is that each book is saying, they both speak about the power and the presence of love in our lives. They both speak about how it is that when we connect with that divine love that we are and we share that with the world, we're able to truly make the sort of difference. We're able to live our lives filled with the presence of God like we would like to. So before we start looking at Esther, we're going to take a look at her metaphysically. And in unity, when we look at something in the Bible metaphysically, what we're doing is we're looking at the symbolism that we can find in the people, the places, the events of the Bible. And then we take that symbolism and we apply it to our lives. We see how it fits with our own spiritual journey. So when I say we're going to look at the story of Esther metaphysically, that's what I mean. We're going to look at the symbolism we can find in that. But before we begin looking at it metaphysically, it's important that you take the time, anytime you're looking at a text from the Bible, to first realize the culture, the context, who wrote the book, why they wrote it, when it was written. You see, the Bible is filled with all sorts of different types of stories. It's a book that's filled with historical records and with poetry and with myths and historical fiction. All of these types of literary structures are are present in the Hebrew and the Christian scriptures. And so when we look at Esther, if we took the book of Esther today, if it was published today, and we walked into the bookshelf or we went into the Kindle store on our phone to buy a copy of Esther, you would find it in the historical fiction section. See, Esther was one of those books that scholars believe was written for the Israelites who had been affected by the diaspora. That was the spreading of all of the Jewish citizens throughout the Middle East. And this novella of sorts was written to explain to them that even though you're in a foreign land, even though you've lost your heritage, it's so vitally important to our survival that you remember who you are, that you remember your connection to where you came from, that you remember your connection to each other because we're from the same tribe, even if we're not physically in that place anymore. And so Esther was written to help communicate that to those people. And you can tell that it's got that sort of flair of historical fiction to it, because this is a book, it's prone to just wide generalizations. You know, they talk about building the gallows for these people that they want to punish, and they're 75 feet tall, and you know, the party went on for 160 days. So these big, long exaggerations that are just sort of the author's way of saying, it's a long time. This is me being inventive with this. So what we see, though, in the book of Esther is a powerful story about what it means to connect with who and what you are, what it means to remember and honor your heritage. You see, at the beginning of the story, Esther is denying her heritage as a Jewish woman. And she's doing this because she was told to. You see, what's going on at this time in the story is the king of the kingdom she's residing in is looking for a new wife. He's trying to find a new queen for the kingdom. And so he's had all of his advisors assemble 12 women. And these 12 women are going to go through a whole year-long practice and a whole year-long contest to determine which one of them is going to be the next queen. It's sort of like the Hebrew Scriptures version of The Bachelor. And what Esther's uncle, her uncle's name's Mordecai, what Mordecai knows is that if the king finds out she's Jewish, she's not getting a rose. Took a few of you a minute, yeah. And so he instructs her to hide her identity, to not keep the laws and the customs of her people, because that would let him know that she's Jewish. And so Esther does exactly as she's told. She hides who she is. And this is the first lesson that we find for us. How often have we hidden who we are? How often have we forgotten that we have that power and that presence of God within us? That Christ nature, that perfect presence of God. We do it all the time. I did it just last week. I was going through my day, completely and blissfully unaware of those little nudgings from God. You know the nudgings I'm talking about, that little moment of inspiration that says, go say hi to this person, smile at this person. Do this for someone else. We go through life just checking off that to-do list, doing everything that we're supposed to do, completely unaware, forgetting all the while that God's there trying to inspire us. We're like Esther is at the start of that book. We've forgotten the spiritual practice that gave us so much meaning, that made us who we were. We've forgotten to pray. We've stopped praying. We've stopped giving. We've stopped connecting with God. I don't know what the reason might be for you. Sometimes it is because we're afraid of being labeled as part of that weird unity place where they think they're God. And so it's just easier with that friend who's standing there with a Bible going, you know, Jesus said, to go, uh-huh. So we've forgotten to claim the truth of who and what we are, just like Esther did. But as Esther goes through her story, as Esther lives with the king and sees how her people are treated, she becomes faced with a decision. She has a choice that she can make. And that choice is about living her life from a place of love. And so as we make that journey today, as we start to strive towards making that decision for love, I'd like to invite you to stand and join with the song leaders in singing that decision, and joining with them and singing, "Love is my decision."
Love is my decision. It's up to me to give up my heart. Love is my decision. No one else can tell me to start. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision right here and now. Love is my decision. It's up to me to stand on that bridge. Love is my decision. No one else can make me forgive. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision right here and now. Love is my decision. It's up to me to dance down the road. Love is my decision, and no one else can lighten my load. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision right here and now. Love is my decision. It's up to me to dance down the road. Love is my decision, and no one else can lighten my load. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision right here and now. My decision right here and now. Now please remain standing and greet the wonderful people around you.
I love all the love that's in this room right now. And I know that we could continue on all morning. But now we're going to move on into Ruth. And Ruth is a book primarily about two women and their relationship. An Israelite woman named Naomi and her Moabite daughter-in-law Ruth. And Naomi and her husband and their two sons Chilion and Milon left Judah during a great famine in the land and went to Moab. Now, it's important to understand that the Israelites were not very fond of the folks from Moab, that they saw them as very destructive and hurtful people. And so for them to travel and to go on to Moab was very, very interesting. And then once they arrived, both of Naomi's sons married Moabite women. And 10 years after they had arrived in Moab, Naomi was very sad. For her husband, Elimelech, and her 2 sons were all dead, and she was alone. She was very sad, very bitter, very angry. And she had heard that back in Bethlehem that the famine was over and that there was plenty of food for everyone. And so she had determined that she was going to return to her homeland. However, she had these 2 Moabite daughters-in-law, and so she encouraged them to feel free to stay in Moab. For it was the custom at that time that the family's wealth, the land, which was very important, was passed down through the sons, and neither of them had children. And so she encouraged them both to stay in Moab, and Oprah, one of the daughters-in-law, did determine to do that. And we're going to pick up the story now in Ruth chapter 1 and read verses 15 to 22. And Naomi is talking to her other daughter-in-law, Ruth. So she, which is Naomi, said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not press me to leave you or to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die. There will I be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me, and more as well, if even death parts me from you." When Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. So the 2 of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Call me no longer Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has dealt harshly with me and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" So Naomi returned together with Ruth to the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, who came back with her from the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So how often are we like Naomi, feeling that we have been dealt harshly in life? That life has been rather unkind to us? And we're angry and bitter, not understanding why. Seeing that all that has happened as an end in itself, rather than knowing that there may be something beyond this. And so as we look at these two women metaphysically, we begin to understand in another way. For Naomi really represents in this story that what it's like to be living separated from God. Because at that point, all that can be seen is the circumstances at face value. The loss, the loneliness, the bitterness, the disappointment, the not understanding why. Where Ruth in this story represents what it's like to live from that place of that deep connection with God, of living that Spirit-led life in a way that it moves beyond the circumstances. Yes, there may be pain and loss, but Ruth was able to see life's circumstances, for she too suffered great loss. But she was able to rise above that and to see from a higher plane. That's very important for us to remember. For there really is no shortage of challenges in our lives. We all face them. They may be different, but they're all there. But when we choose to live from that Spirit-led place, to rise above the circumstances as they are, and trust that in due season they too will be redeemed in a whole new way, we live a very different life. And so let us be open and ponder today about what our world might be like. How wonderful it might be if we truly live from that place.
So meanwhile, I got to think Esther's just kind of walking through the castle humming that song. Everything's going great. She found favor with the king, and she was selected to become his queen, and so she's being pampered by all these servants, and there's just no end to the wonderful food that's available to her, and all of the wine she could drink. She is very happy right now. And because of a law that exists in this kingdom, she hasn't seen her husband, the king, for over 30 days. That could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you feel about the king you're married to. You see, the law in this kingdom said that you were only allowed to approach the king if he summoned you. And the penalty for violating this law was death. I told you there are a few things that will let you know that it's historical fiction, and that's one of them. This is a very exaggerated punishment. But they're trying to set up how important it is for what Esther does later. And so Esther was quite content to just sit in her section of the castle and enjoy being pampered and attend the occasional banquet. She wasn't about to go approach that king. Would you? And then something shifts. See, remember, Esther had an uncle named Mordecai. And as it turns out, Mordecai offended one of the king's right-hand men, the leader of his armies, the leader of all of kind of the business of his kingdom, a man named Haman. And he offended Haman by not bowing to him, not showing him the respect that his office required that you be shown. And so, as is often prone to happen in these sorts of mythological tales, Haman overreacts gloriously. And he decides that if this one man won't show him respect because he's Jewish, and he's not going to bow down to one man because that would be putting him on the same level as God. So if this one man doesn't do it, well, all the others are going to start not showing me respect as well. And so what is Haman's solution? Destroy them all. We'll kill all of them. And then that won't be an issue anymore because there won't be anybody left to not show me respect. And so he devises a way to trick the king into issuing this order. He casts something called a pur. It's basically a lot, and it lands on a day on the calendar, and he says, on this day, on the 13th, that's when this order is going to take effect. And interestingly enough, the Jewish holiday Purim comes from this. They take the name from that little lot that Haman casts. And so Esther's going through life, everything's fine, until her uncle comes to her. And her uncle tells her what's happening, the order that's been issued, and begs her to go and beseech the king. You're the queen, surely you can save us. The king will listen to you. And now Esther has a choice to make. You see, she hasn't been summoned. And so, does she remember her connection to her people? Does she remember the truth of what she is and approach the king and run the risk of being killed for who she is, assuming she even makes it to that stage if the king goes, oh no, I issued that order, we're doing this. She's now identified herself as Jewish. And that's assuming that the king doesn't just kill her for approaching him in the first place. What would you do? Would you be willing to put that much at risk to save those that you are connected to? Esther tells her uncle to tell all of the people that they should fast for 3 days, and she'll join them. And then she'll approach the king. And when she does, the king grants her his blessing to speak to her. He says, what do you want? What can I give you? Anything you want, up to half of my kingdom, it's yours. Now you would think that would be the moment that she'd go, please don't kill my people. But it's not. Esther says, we're going to throw a huge banquet, and I want to honor you and your servant Haman. I think Esther also knew the king was more likely to go along with what she was suggesting if he was filled with wine. So she gets them all together, have a wonderful banquet, drink all of the wine in the castle, and the king says, what can I do for you? What is your request? Again, you would think this is the stage where she's going to go, please don't, this order that was issued, please put a stop to it. But she doesn't. She says, I want one more banquet. And they all come back for the last banquet. And at this time, this is the moment when Esther answers the queen or the king honestly. This is the moment where she tells him, the order that you issued is an order to kill all of my people. All of those people that I'm connected to, my uncle, my family. And the king is furious. Furious that this has happened. And he demands to know who tricked me into doing this. And Esther identifies Haman. And so his evil plan is put to a stop. And from this story, we learn two very powerful spiritual lessons. The first is the importance of identifying with who and what we are, with identifying with that Christ presence within all of us, with claiming it and saying that this is who I am and I'm proud of who I am. I love to let this light shine. And the second is to know that once you do that, you are going to be filled with a sort of fearless, unconditional love. You see, our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, wrote that Esther represents fearless, selfless love. That when we're in that place where we're being like Esther, we're loving selflessly. And that love causes us to do things that may not seem the most logical or even the most safe. but we react out of love. And so those two steps, the two things for us to remember, is that first of all, we, all of us, we are the Christ. And we're connected through that Christ presence, through that presence of God within you. It's in each one of you that's here today. It's in all of us. And so the first and most important thing for us to do is to claim our oneness in the presence of God. To know that each one of us is forever connected by the light of God that we are. And then to take that second step. That second step that Esther took. To stand up fearlessly for her people, to name the evil that was happening in their midst and to put a stop to it. Now, I sincerely hope that none of you here today are ever in a position where you're so directly responsible for being able to put an end to genocide. But I would also say that we can look around the world around us today, and we can easily identify those people, those individuals that are being treated as less than, that are being told that for whatever reason they aren't as good, as sacred, as loving, as holy as everyone else. And what I want you to know is that because the presence of God exists in them just as it exists in you, that we are one with them. And just as Esther stood up with that fearless love and said that what is happening is not right, we too are called to stand up, to defend, to love, to honor, to protect, to support all of us on this journey. Because we're all connected through that light of God within us. And so the same love that led Esther to save her people is the same love that leads us to make a difference in the world. And so I'd like to invite you to move from that space in your head down to your heart, to claim that love that you are, and to stand and join with our song leaders in singing Sacred Love.
Is all that you are. Sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, God. Sacred love is all that you are.
And so now we are back in Bethlehem. And Naomi has encouraged her daughter-in-law, Ruth, to go out and to work in the fields. And while she was out there, she met Boaz. And Boaz had told Ruth to stay close to his handmaidens, and they would keep her safe. And so they traveled, she went out and worked in the fields. And as time went on, Boaz continued to watch over Ruth, and they became dear friends. Their relationship developed, and Ruth bore a son named Obed. And the beauty in this story is the redemption that came to Naomi through Obed. Remember that we talked about in the beginning, the metaphysical of Naomi was this life living separate from a union with God. But through her daughter-in-law, Ruth, representing this selfless love, connection with spirit, a deep knowing of the truth of who she is, Naomi was then able to transfer the land, everything that her husband Elimelech had left. There was now an heir, and there was family for her once again. You know, it's very easy for us in those times of distress, those times of loss and of grief, to become just as Naomi and only be able to see like this what's right in front of us. But Ruth had that sense of vision, her sense of commitment, of grace, exemplified a very unselfish love. And as in Esther, this unselfish love represented a quality of fearlessness. So let us choose to live from that space, that place that both of these women demonstrate. And I'm sure that you can think of women, mothers, or someone with a mother-like expression in your life who has exemplified these qualities for you. So I invite us this day to remember to move forward in our lives from a very unselfish place, showing great love of commitment and grace to another. and as shown by Esther, knowing that this unselfish love is fearless and able to stand and to give voice to what really matters in this world. Let's live from that place. Happy Mother's Day, and God bless you. Thank you.
Mama's eyes, they hold me. My mama's eyes are sweet. My mama's eyes, they scold me, but I can't stand the heat. They're the eyes that light my way when all my light has slipped away. Mama's eyes are beautiful. Mama's eyes are sweet. I've been through some valleys. I've been through some storms. There have been some winding roads, some places I thought no love could grow. Through the days and through the years, through the smiles and through the tears, see her face, touch her hand, feel her strength and make a stand. Mama's eyes, they hold me, but mama's eyes are sweet. My mama's eyes may scold me, but I can't stand the heat. They're the eyes that light my way when all my light has slipped away. Mama's eyes are beautiful. Mama's eyes are sweet. Fly too far away, her gentle voice to me does say, feel my love, take my hand, follow me to your promised land. Mama's eyes, they hold me, my mama's eyes are sweet. My mama's eyes, they scold me, the eyes that light my way when all my life has slipped away. Mama's eyes are beautiful. Mama's eyes are sweet. They're the eyes that light my way when all my light has slipped away. Mama's eyes are blue.